Show me your hands now! Get on the ground now! Get on the ground now! A lot of stupid right now.
You guys have fun, all right?
I just woke up and I have no idea what's going on. Look, we'll talk to. I'm just reading you the search warrant. Do you understand?
It's going
to be under agency case number with Lee County 24-06919. This is what we're searching the house for. The law prohibits performance by a child controlled by Florida State Statute 827.
In February 2024, sheriff's deputies in Lee County, Florida, raided the Fort Myers home of married couple Samantha Lee White and John Wesley White II. While there, they discovered evidence that 26-year-old Samantha had engaged in inappropriate contact with the family's pet Labrador. They also learned that John, who was 29 years old at the time, had filmed Samantha having intercourse with the dog. 4 dogs were removed from the residence and placed in a safe environment after being evaluated for injuries. In the meantime, authorities charged the Whites with various crimes relating to their actions. According to an arrest affidavit, Samantha admitted to being intimate with the dog during police questioning. She reportedly told the detectives interviewing her that she was curious about these types of activities with horses and had even looked for videos online and that she decided to try it with the dog. John admitted to having images of his wife's interactions with the dog on his phone, which was found submerged in a toilet bowl during the raid. He also confessed to filming a video but denied participating in the act. Samantha originally faced 7 charges, but 4 were dropped in April 2025 after she pleaded guilty to 3 counts. She was sentenced to 3 years in prison, followed by 3 years of probation. Following her release from prison, she'll be banned from possessing or living with animals until her probation is over, and she's been added to the state's animal abuser registry. John White was charged for the activities involving the dog, along with several additional counts for possessing illegal images of minors. During the summer of 2024, the Marion County Sheriff's Office received a tip about a nurse getting caught having intercourse with her teenage stepson at the family's Ocala, Florida home. The victim told detectives that his stepmother, 34-year-old Alexis Von Yates, had been making suggestive jokes and comments for several days when she put the moves on him. An arrest affidavit states that Von Yates and her stepson had spent the evening playing video games and watching a movie while her husband, the boy's father, was at work. They thought the movie was boring and shifted their focus to each other, and it wasn't long before Von Yates' behavior surpassed both legal and moral boundaries. When they realized that the teen's dad had arrived home, they scrambled to try concealing the situation. But Von Yates was half-dressed when her husband entered the house, and he quickly deducted that something very wrong had taken place. He immediately drove his son back to the boy's grandfather's house, where he lived full-time, and the victim later told police that he had been warned by several family members to stay silent about what had happened. By the time investigators learned about the incident, the boy's relatives had decided that they were willing to support him in a case against Von Yates. A few months after the incident, police arrested Von Yates for the battery of a minor in familial custody. She pleaded not guilty and was released on bond. In the meantime, the state suspended and has since revoked her nursing license. Von Yates is currently awaiting trial and is due back in court in late July. Number 37. Brandon Ziobrowski. When outrage spread over President Trump's immigration policies during his first term in office, many Americans directed their anger at U.S. Immigrations and Customs Enforcement, with some even calling for the agency to be abolished altogether. 33-year-old Brandon Ziobrowski of Cambridge, Massachusetts, took things a step further in July of 2018 when he posted a tweet stating, "I am broke, but I will scrounge and literally give $500 to anyone who kills an ICE agent." He encouraged others to pledge and get in on this, adding, "We can make this work." With just 400 followers, Ziobrowski was not even close to being an influencer, and only 2 people liked the tweet, but it caught the attention of federal authorities, who spotted the post while scouring the internet for domestic and international terrorism threats. The following month, Ziobrowski was charged with using interstate and foreign commerce to transmit a threat to injure another person. If convicted, Ziobrowski could have faced a maximum 5-year prison sentence and a fine of up to $250,000. He insisted that he had made the post in jest and that he had no serious plans to harm any ICE agents, arguing through his attorney that the tweet fell in line with his tendency to use hyperbolic and sarcastic statements to express his disapproval of perceived government overreach. Ziobrowski had been tweeting openly in this manner for nearly a decade, yet hadn't committed any violent acts. Furthermore, the defense pointed out that President Trump himself has a habit of using vitriolic and inflammatory speech, which is not much different from Ziobrowski's, even though the two men clearly see the world in much different ways. In December 2019, a jury acquitted Ziobrowski of the charge after concluding that his words fell short of constituting a true threat. When approached by the press as he left the courthouse as a free man, Ziobrowski said, "It seemed like the right verdict. It's been a horrible year. I'm glad it's over." Number 36. Kymberlee Schopper and Ashley Lelesi. In December 2023, police in Orange County, Florida, received a tip about the owners of a local curio shop trying to sell human bones for sale on Facebook Marketplace. Screenshots of advertisements showing skull fragments with an asking price of $90, a human rib for $35, a partial skull that was being offered for $600, and more. One of the store's owners, Ashley Lelesi, reportedly told police that the business had been selling human bones for years and that she didn't realize it was illegal. Lelesi's mother and the store's other owner, 52-year-old Kymberlee Schopper, showed some PayPal transactions to law enforcement, but redacted the personal information of the people they did business with. Schopper told the police they would need a warrant for further information and that the bones were educational models purchased from private sellers. She and Lelesi were charged with buying and selling human organs or tissue, which is a rare crime even in Florida, where strange things are infamously known to happen. The Volusia County Medical Examiner's Office looked at several of the bones and concluded that they most likely came from two adult males, with one being of archaeological origin while the other was most likely an anatomical specimen. Following the arrests, the defendant's store has remained closed, with a sign on the outside stating that the owners are spending time with a dying family member and for no other reason. Number 35. Kelli Tedford. In February 2025, 23-year-old Kelli Tedford of Keene, New Hampshire, was charged with felony criminal mischief for posting footage of herself urinating on various food items inside a grocery store, also known by her OnlyFans moniker Kinky Kelly. The young woman was accused of causing $1,500 worth of damage to the store's inventory and forcing recalls on several items including organic quinoa, cornmeal, polenta, coconut shreds, and raw walnuts. Police launched an investigation after receiving a tip about Tedford's antics. They uncovered numerous videos dating back to 2021 which appeared to show the suspect urinating in various public locations, including other stores. Following her arrest, Tedford was released on her own recognizance while the investigation continued. In April 2025, she was arrested on 5 counts of felony criminal mischief for urinating all over a room at the Marriott Hotel in Keene. The incident reportedly took place in January, roughly a month before Tedford's first arrest. She's accused of relieving herself on an air conditioning unit, curtains, a comforter, and the Bible inside the room. Authorities also claimed that the defendant defecated on the floor and hid the excrement inside the toilet's tank. Tedford is currently awaiting arraignment for the charges in both cases. Number 34. Joel Brown. On the night of March 14th, 2025, a burglar broke into a family-owned collectibles store in Fairfax, Virginia, called Gaming Giant, while wearing a Spider-Man costume. He made off with $10,000 worth of graded and sealed trading cards, including highly coveted Pokemon products. Police arrested 20-year-old Joel Brown of Silver Spring, Maryland, on a burglary charge after receiving tips from community members. News of the burglary left members of the area's tight-knit card collecting community feeling violated and betrayed. Speaking with Fox 5, the store's owner said that Brown had previously stopped in at the business and inquired about certain high-demand cards, which were kept in a glass case. In hindsight, the owner realized that the suspect was casing the store. He later said that Brown knew exactly what he was looking for when he came in. Brown was released on an unsecured bond and appears to be keeping a low profile while members of the media seek him out for comment. Number 33. Alitia Thoburn. In May of 2023, 20-year-old Alitia Thoburn caved to the urge to get her face tattooed. She's been fascinated with tattoos since childhood and was working as a tattoo artist at a studio in Oxfordshire, England, when she began to contemplate inking her face. And while she was initially focused on covering the rest of her body first, she took the plunge on impulse one day as her fiancé, 37-year-old Jonathan Saunders, tattooed her arm. Saunders suggested extending the design, which resembles a paintbrush stroke, to Thoburn's face. She consented and was happy with how it turned out, but has since added some flowers to the tattoo to give it a more feminine appearance. But not everyone feels the same way about Thoburn's new look. Perhaps not surprisingly, many people have criticized and mocked her facial tattoo, with some saying that she ruined her face or that no one will want to be with her. She also receives judgmental and disapproving glances in public and has been told that even if she doesn't regret the tattoo now, she will someday. Thoburn doesn't let the criticism affect her, however. In fact, she's spoken out against negative stereotypes about people with tattoos being thugs and criminals, and she plans to eventually cover her entire body with ink. Number 32, Richard Kristopher Smith.
Stop! Stop! I said give you a drink, that's it!
He's drinking some, looked like a beer or something. He just drove by. He's back towards,
Show me your hands now!
On an otherwise ordinary afternoon in April of 2025, authorities received a theft complaint from a grocery store in Highlands County, Florida. A man later identified as 39-year-old Richard Kristopher Smith had taken alcoholic beverages and other items without paying, and deputies spotted his black minivan nearby while they were en route to the store. When he realized the police were after him, Smith sped off, leading law enforcement on a miles-long high-speed chase. At one point during the pursuit, he slowed down long enough to offer deputies some hard seltzer while holding a can of Ketel One vodka spritz. Smith's boozy joyride came to an end when he tried to ram 2 patrol cars and ran over a set of spike strips in the process, causing all 4 of his tires to go flat. In police body cam footage, he could be seen exiting his minivan while smoking a cigarette, and although he seemed calm, deputies tased him when he failed to comply with their orders to get on the ground. As Smith was being lifted off the ground, he could be heard saying, "You guys had fun though, right?" He was charged with 2 counts of aggravated assault on a law enforcement officer, 2 counts of resisting arrest, and 1 count each of battery on a law enforcement officer. DUI, refusal to submit to a DUI test, and petty theft. Smith was booked into the Highlands County Jail with bond set at $120,000 and appears to no longer be in custody. Number 31, Christopher Eaves. 51-year-old defense attorney James R.T. Eaves was mercilessly gunned down in the driveway of his Phoenix, Arizona home on the morning of Friday, March 21st, 2025. Shortly after 8 a.m., a 911 caller reported seeing a white BMW fleeing the scene, where officers found Eaves lying face down in a pool of blood. The witness had managed to jot down the car's license plate number, which quickly traced back to Artie's 49-year-old brother, Christopher Eaves. News cameras were at the scene when Christopher returned with his parents, who were unaware of their younger son's alleged involvement in the crime. Media cameras turned their attention toward the suspect as he was handcuffed and taken into custody. According to a police report, Christopher lived with his parents and had returned to their house after the shooting. By then, they had heard about something bad happening to Artie, and Christopher chose to accompany them to his house. During a search of the suspect's home and vehicle, police found several guns, including a firearm on his bedside table which matched shell casings found at the crime scene. Christopher's parents told law enforcement that their son suffers from mental illness and that he had been hospitalized 2 years earlier after being found unconscious with drugs in his system. He's being held on a $1.5 million cash bond as he faces first-degree murder and burglary charges. 4 days after his arrest, Christopher threw a tantrum while sitting down for a jailhouse interview with AZ Family crime correspondent Brianna Whitney. He immediately stated that he did not want any walk-in footage and demanded a suit of clothes to change into before being filmed. When a deputy refused to accommodate the demand, Christopher claimed that he was being denied his right to counsel and said he wanted to talk to the American Civil Liberties Union. He was escorted away and the interview was called off. It remains unclear whether the defendant's alleged mental health issues will be a focal point of the case. Number 30, Kenneth Allen Keith. On September 20th, 2013, 911 dispatchers in Danville, Kentucky, received an emergency call from a little boy who reported that his parents and a 3rd victim had been shot dead during a robbery at the family's pawn shop. Officers rushed over to ABC Gold Games and More, where they smashed their way inside after finding the front door locked. The victims were identified as the store's owners, 34-year-old Michael and 38-year-old Angela Hockensmith, and 60-year-old gold buyer Dan P. Smith. During the investigation that followed, authorities received a call from a Michigan-based pastor who had grown suspicious of the store's former co-owner, 48-year-old Kenneth Allen Keith. Shortly after the triple homicide, Keith, who's also a pastor, gave the witness a very specific rundown of his activities that day, as if he was trying to establish an alibi. He also made very angry-sounding comments about the Hockensmiths being bad people and getting what they deserved. After learning about the conversation, investigators discovered that Keith had become enraged toward the Hockensmiths after they chose to sell gold to Smith, the third shooting victim, instead. During a set of secretly recorded phone calls with the witness, Keith revealed information that only the killer would know. He also talked about how he was going to prison and how his daughter would be growing up without him. Keith also reportedly gave a detailed confession to his defense attorney but pleaded not guilty when he was charged with the killings. As the case prepared to go to trial during the summer of 2017, he pleaded guilty to 3 counts of murder, first-degree burglary, and first-degree robbery. The victims' families agreed to the plea deal, which spared Keith from the death penalty and came with a sentence of life without parole. Number 29. Ayla Gonzalez Salinas. A 20-year-old Florida woman is facing criminal charges for having an inappropriate relationship with an underage boy she met at her funeral. According to an arrest affidavit, Ayla Gonzalez Salinas abused the victim throughout the month of December 2024. Police launched an investigation after receiving a tip and discovered text messages between Salinas and the victim about how they should get their story straight. The two reportedly agreed to say that the victim initiated the relationship and made sure they were on the same page with other details, including how many times they met. Records show that on April 28, 2025, Gonzalez Salinas was booked into the Palm Beach County Jail on 7 counts of lewd or lascivious battery. She was released on bond 2 days later, and the case is ongoing. Number 28. Henry Betsey Jr. Tonya Betsey of Seminole County, Florida, was shocked and heartbroken when she discovered that her husband, Henry Betsey Jr., was married to 2 other women in 2 other counties. She contacted one of the women, Michelle Betsey, who alerted law enforcement in Hernando County, and an investigation was launched. Henry married his first wife, Tonya Betsey, in Duval County in November of 2020. They had met on a dating site, which is how Henry met his second and third wives. Brandy Betsey connected with Henry on Stir, a dating app for single parents, and the two married in February 2022. She later told the ABC Action News I-Team that it was her first time ever using a dating app and that Henry said all the right things. 9 months later, in November 2022, Henry married Michelle following a 3-week whirlwind courtship. They too had met on a dating site. Henry's 3 wives began communicating with one another after learning about each other. Following the investigation, authorities charged him with felony bigamy. Speaking with ABC's I-Team, the women described how their relationships with Henry soured quickly after exchanging marriage vows. He seemed more concerned with money than love, leading to the suspicion that his motives were primarily financial in nature. Following his arrest in April 2025, Henry filed for divorce from Tonya, and he's reportedly in the process of trying to annul his marriages to Brandy and Michelle. And he appears to be searching for a new partner, according to his estranged wives who recently found his profile on a dating app. This discovery, coupled with the knowledge that Henry could possibly avoid jail time, has given rise to fears history may repeat itself. Number 27. Brandon Cruz and Pablo Reyes. Shortly before 3 a.m. on July 2nd, 2019, police responded to a reported shooting in Lubbock, Texas, where they found 41-year-old Michael McCoy suffering from a gunshot wound. He had been waiting at a red light in his pickup truck when he was ambushed by 2 robbers who forced him to drive to a nearby ATM. McCoy tried running once they reached the ATM, but the suspects shot him and fled in his truck. He was taken to a nearby hospital where he later died from his injuries. While investigating the case, police realized that a similar aggravated robbery had occurred just hours earlier. Shortly after midnight, a pair of armed men had carjacked the driver of a Chevy Malibu. He escaped after being forced into the trunk of his car at gunpoint, and the thieves made off with his wallet, cell phone, and other personal belongings. Police arrested the first of 3 suspects, 26-year-old Pablo Reyes, hours later after discovering the first victim's car on the property of a relative. Weeks later, 30-year-old Brandon Cruz and 33-year-old Joseph Sanchez were charged in connection with the carjackings. During his interrogation, Reyes could be seen bursting into tears and saying he didn't want to go back to prison, as he denied having any involvement in the crimes.
I'm not trying to go to prison. Yeah, dude. You know what?
Investigators told him that Cruz had given him up, which wasn't true, and Reyes blamed Cruz for the shooting. Cruz also denied participating in the crimes. He remained calm until detectives told him that one of the victims' phones was pinging in his apartment and that law enforcement was raiding the property as they spoke. When he realized he was in serious trouble, which could result in hard time, he became incredulous, as if in disbelief over the potential consequences of his actions. Cruz and Reyes were awaiting sentencing for their charges when they were implicated in another violent incident that had occurred the month before the two carjackings. The two men had robbed a man named David Rodriguez, whose car had broken down outside a convenience store. They then kidnapped and killed a woman who was helping him, Sandy Cervantes, who was found dead inside an abandoned house 10 months later. In September 2023, Cruz pleaded guilty to capital murder and was sentenced to life without parole. Reyes pleaded guilty to the aggravated robbery of Michael McCoy and received a 40-year sentence with the possibility of parole after 20 years. Number 26, Ammenra Felton.
People identified you. That's why we're here.
Identify for me shooting somebody?
Yes, sir.
Man, you got to wrap it up. So that's what I'm here for. Y'all come here for me shooting somebody?
Yep.
Talk.
Yeah.
What the is y'all talking about?
I'm talking about, we're down here talking about the fact you shot somebody that died.
I shot somebody that died.
Mm-hmm. A female. That was going through your car.
On January 23rd, 2022, 32-year-old Charlotte Thomas of Rochester, New York, was found lying in the street with a gunshot wound. She was rushed to the emergency room where she died 5 hours later. Police identified the suspected killer as 32-year-old Ammenra Felton, who was accused of shooting Thomas during an altercation despite the two being strangers. Investigators tracked him down in Sugar Land, Texas, and flew down there to arrest him. When the detectives asked Felton why he was in Texas, he responded with a blank stare and several seconds of silence before asking, "Are you serious?" The detectives proceeded to show Felton several pictures of himself and asked him if he recognized himself. He continued to act confused. So one of the detectives mentioned that he appeared to be wearing the same jacket in one of the photos that he was wearing that day. At the beginning of the interview, Felton had told the cops that he had only been in Texas for 2 days. When they told him he had been seen at a smoke shop in Rochester on the day of the shooting more than a week earlier, he claimed he was already in Texas by that time. Felton continued to act clueless about the homicide despite the evidence being stacked against him. When the police informed him that he was being charged with murder and criminal possession of a weapon, he seemed downright shocked. He was extradited to New York, where he was found guilty as charged in August of 2023 and was sentenced to 25 years to life in prison. Number 25, Adam Valle. On December 27th, 2018, surveillance cameras captured footage of a masked suspect attempting to steal a bicycle that was chained up outside the Gladstone Police Department in Oregon. Later identified as 26-year-old Adam Valle, he could be seen removing a pair of bolt cutters from a plastic bag and trying to cut the chain. An officer confronted him with a taser in hand, at which point he put his hands up and surrendered. Valle refused to explain why he was trying to steal the bike. He was charged with theft, criminal mischief, and being a felon in possession of a weapon, but he encountered much bigger legal woes just 2 months later when he was arrested in March of 2019 for a hit-and-run case. According to police, Valle fled on foot after crashing his car into a light pole during a police chase. His passenger, 19-year-old Heaven Lee Matthews, died at the scene, and Valle was charged with manslaughter, hit-and-run, reckless driving, and driving under the influence of intoxicants. He's currently serving a 7-year prison sentence, which will be followed by 3 years of probation. Number 24, Matthew Hunter.
What's going on, bro?
I just came over to talk to you.
Shortly after midnight on Saturday, April 26th, 2025, a Florida woman called 911 and reported that someone had tried to break into her Palm Coast home. She told the dispatcher that she had overheard someone tampering with the lock on her front door. At some point, she looked out the window and saw her neighbor, 63-year-old Matthew Hunter, standing outside completely unclothed while demanding to be let into the home. Flagler County deputies arrived just as Hunter was walking away from the residence. While investigating the scene, they noticed gouge marks on the victim's doorframe. They also spoke with Hunter's wife, who said that her husband had been drinking heavily and was on psychiatric medication. She admitted that she was afraid of Hunter, but said that she was sleeping when he left the house and was therefore unaware of what was happening. Hunter appears to have no prior criminal history in Flagler County, but is now facing charges of exposure, attempted burglary, and criminal mischief charges. He posted bonds totaling $12,000 and is awaiting his arraignment hearing, which is scheduled for May 27th. Number 23, Keith Devereaux. In late January of 2025, Florida Highway Patrol troopers attempted a late-night traffic stop on a man who was driving erratically. The suspect, later identified as 36-year-old Keith Devereaux, put the pedal to the metal and fled from law enforcement. He attempted to run from the scene after losing control of his pickup truck and crashing into a tree, but was tased by pursuing officers. Devereaux became aggressive toward a trooper who was trying to arrest him and fled on foot with one wrist handcuffed, losing his Nike flip-flops along the way. A police canine led law enforcement to his girlfriend's home, but she refused to let anyone inside, claiming that there were drugs inside the residence and that she didn't want to go to jail. Police obtained a search warrant the following day and returned to the home, where they found Devereaux hiding out in a Dalmatian print pajama onesie. He was charged with numerous crimes, including reckless driving, fleeing, assault of law enforcement, resisting with violence, and possession of methamphetamine. The reason behind his unique wardrobe choice is unclear. Number 22. Frank Singleton. 21-year-old Frank Singleton of West Palm Beach, Florida, had just been released from the Palm Beach County Jail after being arrested for misdemeanor trespassing in March of 2008, when he decided to carjack a woman in the facility's parking lot. But he quickly ran into difficulties as he tried to drive away in the 23-year-old victim's Nissan 350ZX because he didn't know how to operate a manual transmission. Needless to say, it didn't take very long before Singleton was back in police custody on a felony carjacking charge. When questioned about why he tried to steal the car, he reportedly said that he didn't feel like walking home, which was 6 miles away. Records show that Singleton was sentenced to 6 years for the carjacking charge. During that time, he also caught a charge for blocking a fire extinguisher and received a 1-year term. He was released from prison in 2014 and appears to have avoided any major run-ins with the Florida criminal justice system in the years since. Number 21. Nikki Quarterman. On March 29, 2025, police responded to a domestic incident at a home in St. Petersburg, Florida, where 40-year-old Nikki Quarterman had gotten into an altercation with her on and off romantic partner of more than 10 years. In an arrest report, an officer described Quarterman as being very intoxicated during the argument, which occurred at around 11:30 a.m. The 63-year-old victim told police that the enraged woman took her clothes off and started to break everything inside his residence. He convinced Quarterman to go outside, where she allegedly grabbed a 10 to 12-inch conch shell and repeatedly swung at him with it before throwing it at him, causing a laceration to his hand. Quarterman had locked herself in the garage by the time law enforcement arrived and was taken into custody after a brief struggle. She was released from jail on a $15,000 bond and is banned from having any contact with the victim amid the ongoing case. Records show that she has a prior battery conviction in Pinellas County, along with 2 arrests in 2024 for misdemeanor disorderly intoxication. Number 20. Aidan Steigelmann. On the evening of Saturday, February 1st, 2025, 2 men dressed in shirts with police and ICE lettering attempted to enter a residence hall on the Temple University campus in Philadelphia. They were turned away by security and were seen leaving in a Jaguar SUV with a third suspect, who was later identified as 22-year-old Aidan Steigelmann. A few minutes later, the 3 men were spotted at Insomnia Cookies, where one of them was seen filming the activities of his alleged co-conspirators. People noticed their suspicious activity and called the police, who arrested Steigelmann at the scene on suspicion of impersonating a public servant. The other 2 suspects left by the time officers arrived and remain under investigation. Steigelmann is a student at the university but is currently suspended and facing potential expulsion for his alleged actions. It's unclear what the 3 men were planning to do at the residence hall, and authorities have not disclosed the identities of the other 2 suspects. Number 19. Gregory Sean Yearty Jr. In July of 2024, a security camera at a hotel parking garage in Miami Beach, Florida, captured footage of a man crawling into a valet key room at 2 o'clock in the morning. He grabbed several key fobs and stole 4 luxury cars throughout the night with the help of 2 unidentified men, including a Lamborghini Urus and a Rolls-Royce Ghost. During the months-long investigation that ensued, police identified the suspect as 24-year-old Gregory Sean Yearty Jr. After learning that he was wanted, he turned himself in and was booked on 4 counts of grand theft and burglary of an occupied structure. He remains in custody without bond at the Turner Guilford Knight Correctional Center, where he faces a litany of charges in multiple cases. Most of the charges relate to his alleged theft of $2 million worth of luxury cars, with the list consisting of various burglary, theft, carjacking, and robbery counts. Number 18. Brian Harold. During the summer of 2024, 19-year-old Brian Harold and an accomplice committed a string of late-night burglaries and other crimes in residential neighborhoods in and around the English city of Carlisle. One of the clues that helped crack the case was a series of dog feces footprints that Harold had left throughout one family's property, including on a windowsill. A couple who lives at the home realized they had been targeted when they awoke to find their shed door open and the chair positioned beneath the exterior of one of their windows. The footprints matched up with a pair of Harold's shoes, leading to his arrest on multiple charges. According to police, he and his unnamed co-conspirator committed several other crimes that night, including the theft of tools from a van and the theft of a wooden wishing well out of someone's yard. In January of 2025, Harold pleaded guilty to 3 counts of theft and 3 vehicle interference offenses. He received an 18-month community order and was ordered to take a course about making better choices. Number 17, Ruan Rocha da Silva. 23-year-old Ruan Rocha da Silva was just days away from his scheduled release from a Brazilian prison when he and 6 other inmates overtook the guards and escaped on Christmas Day in 2023. He was at the tail end of a 4-year sentence for theft, but he apparently decided he couldn't wait a moment longer to regain his freedom. It turned out to be a bad decision, especially since Silva has a tattoo on his forehead which states, "I am a thief and an idiot," in Portuguese. Silva received the tattoo from 2 of his previous victims who overpowered him during an attempted robbery in 2017. But this didn't stop him from reoffending in 2019, when he was arrested for stealing a cell phone and money from hospital employees. Photos from Silva's recapture less than a month after his escape showed that some of the tattoo's letters appeared faded, indicating that he has likely undergone some treatments to have it removed. But his decision to escape from prison rather than completing the final days of his term still proved to be unwise, because it landed him extra time and a transfer to a maximum security prison. The length of his new term is unclear, but he will be spending it in a much more restrictive setting than he's used to. Number 16, Dustin Lee Wallace. A standard security check at Walt Disney World's Magic Kingdom ended in an arrest in late March of 2025 when a father was caught with cocaine in his wallet. 44-year-old Dustin Lee Wallace of St. Augustine was passing through a checkpoint with his son when a security officer asked him to remove his wallet from his back pocket. He complied, but the officer noticed that the wallet looked bulky and said he would have to look inside of it. Wallace opened the wallet, which appeared to contain a bag filled with a powdery substance, and the officer called his manager for assistance. Orange County Sheriff's deputies were called to the scene and performed a field test on the suspected drug, which turned up positive for cocaine. According to an arrest report, Wallace admitted that he had been using cocaine for about a month due to work-related stress. He pleaded not guilty to a possession charge and is banned from returning to the park. Number 15, Heidi Fuller. Police in Portland, Maine, responded to a somewhat unusual call on a Tuesday evening in April 2025 when a woman called 911 and said that someone had come to her door impersonating law enforcement. Later identified as 40-year-old Heidi Fuller, the suspect was accused of identifying herself as a cop and threatening to shoot the homeowner if she did not answer the door. While carrying out a search warrant on Fuller, police found 2 handguns and ammunition. She was booked into the Cumberland County Jail on charges of terrorizing and impersonating a public servant, and police are encouraging anyone with additional information to contact them. Number 14, Ernest McBride. In June of 2021, a man identified himself as Brian Dale Andrews at the US-Mexico border. It's the name of a man who has been wanted in Polk County, Florida since 2007 for killing Danny and Patricia McCown in a drunk driving crash. Law enforcement had previously received a tip that Andrews had been seen in Mexico, so it seemed believable that he would be in custody. Authorities thought they had finally captured Andrews. They even announced it to the media, only to discover through fingerprints that they were dealing with another fugitive who had given them a fake name. After arriving back in the US, he was identified as Ernest Raymond McBride, who was wanted on outstanding warrants in Missouri and Arkansas. Brian Andrews was 29 years old when he fled the country to avoid prosecution for the deadly wreck that claimed the McCowns' lives. The victims' loved ones had experienced a feeling of long-awaited relief when they thought he had finally been captured, and were devastated after receiving the crushing news that the authorities were mistaken about the wanted fugitive's capture. Number 13, Cody Adams. In September 2024, a man later identified as 28-year-old Cody Adams went to a gas station in Stillwater, Oklahoma, and asked people for a ride to his court hearing in Pawnee for a vehicle theft case. When no one was willing to take him, he allegedly stole a LifeNet emergency services pickup, which had been left idling in the parking lot. Adams made it to the courthouse but was quickly apprehended by a state trooper who saw him ditching the vehicle. He was arrested, but on the bright side, he made it to his court hearing for his previous charges of unauthorized use of a vehicle and bringing contraband into a jail. Afterwards, he was transferred back to Payne County, where he was booked into custody on a vehicle larceny charge, with bail set at $10,000. Number 12. Michelle Mercoliano. A Pennsylvania schoolteacher is facing 63 criminal charges for allegedly having intercourse with a teenage student at her parents' home on at least a dozen separate occasions. According to a criminal complaint, 35-year-old Michelle Mercoliano's inappropriate relationship with the student began in February of 2025 when she started picking him up from school and taking him to buy medical marijuana. It became customary for her to then take the teen to her parents' house in Malvern, where they smoked and were intimate together. Police launched an investigation in April after receiving a complaint from the victim's family. They learned that Mercoliano had used Snapchat to surreptitiously communicate with the victim. Mercoliano faces charges of assault, corruption of minors, and more. She's reportedly cooperating with the authorities and has arranged a time to turn herself in with her attorney present. In the meantime, she's been placed on leave from Conestoga High School, where she had worked as a special education teacher since the fall of 2024. Number 11. Peter Addison. In 2007, police were called to a recently renovated campsite for underprivileged children in the English town of Macclesfield. It had been ransacked and destroyed by vandals. One of the intruders made it easy for officers to catch him by leaving behind a note that said, "Peter Addison was here and thanks for the stay." In addition to scribbling graffiti at the campsite, Addison and another young man had deployed fire extinguishers and smashed dishes, causing thousands of dollars worth of damage to the site. When the police tracked Addison down, he was wearing a t-shirt that had been stolen from the property. He and his accomplice, 18-year-old Mark Ridgway, were reportedly members of a gang called Adlington Massive. But this was no organized crime, according to authorities, who said the teens were drunk when they decided to go on a wrecking spree at the property for no apparent reason. Both defendants pleaded guilty to burglary. Addison received a 12-month conditional discharge and was ordered to pay $1,770 in compensation and costs, while Ridgway was sentenced to 60 hours of community service, a 12-month community order, and the same amount in fines and restitution. Number 10. Stephanie K. Wegman and Joseph Luke Brown. March 27th, 2025 began as a normal day for Florida State Trooper W.R. Kelly, but it took a bizarre and shocking turn when he spotted a couple fornicating on top of an unmarked gravesite at Wild Cow Cemetery in Sumter County, identified by law enforcement as 46-year-old Stephanie K. Wegman and 38-year-old Joseph Luke Brown. The pair were caught in broad daylight when Kelly and another trooper stopped at the cemetery to give their police canine a break. An arrest report states that the offensive act was taking place on unknown grave number 43. While searching their car, the troopers found a suspicious substance which tested positive for methamphetamine as well as Xanax and oxycodone. Wegman was booked on multiple drug-related charges, including 2 counts of possession of a controlled substance without a prescription and 1 count of trafficking oxycodone. Brown was taken to the hospital for a leg injury from an unrelated incident, and authorities stated that they planned to obtain a warrant for his arrest. He has an extensive criminal history which includes prior convictions for burglary, battery, grand larceny, domestic violence, reckless driving, driving under the influence, and more. Number 9. Kristopher Andrew. On April 3rd, 2025, an Ohio man later identified as 58-year-old Kristopher Andrew entered a gentleman's club in North Toledo, Ohio, dressed as a police officer and carrying a semi-automatic rifle. He was also wearing body armor, and at first, the club's employees assumed he was a legitimate member of law enforcement who had a valid reason for being at the business. But they knew that this was unlikely when Andrew went up to the bar and ordered an alcoholic beverage. When a manager scanned Andrew's ID, they realized that he had been banned from the club. According to a police report, he had previously threatened to kill one of the establishment's dancers. Andrew tried leaving the club in an Uber when a customer challenged his story about who he was and why he was there, but he was still at the property when officers arrived. The cops found a small arsenal of weapons in Andrew's possession, including 2 guns and almost a dozen gas and stun grenades. The Uber driver was cleared of any wrongdoing, and Andrew was charged with impersonating a police officer, illegal possession of a firearm in a liquor permit premises, and improperly handling firearms in a motor vehicle. Number 8. George Vargas. while entering the United States on foot through a border checkpoint in El Paso, Texas in late March of 2025. 26-year-old American citizen George Vargas claimed that he was on his way to work after visiting his grandmother, but border agents quickly discovered that he had crossed into the U.S. at a different border checkpoint just 2 hours earlier. Vargas was sent to a secondary inspection area, where an agent noticed that he was clenching his thighs in a suspicious manner during a pat-down. A narcotics canine was brought into the room and quickly alerted to the man's rear end, at which point agents noticed a suspicious bulge protruding in the back of his pants. Realizing he was caught, Vargas removed 2 packages of methamphetamine weighing more than 5 ounces from his buttocks. He consented to an interview without an attorney present and admitted to knowingly bringing illegal drugs into the United States, telling investigators that he needed the money. Vargas also said he had been threatened. Although a criminal complaint does not detail the nature of the alleged threats, he was taken into custody on a drug smuggling charge and could face more than a decade behind bars in the event of a conviction. Number 7. Austin Dennis Lee Casey and Crystal Lynn Wallace. Police in Bono, Arkansas, encountered a highly unexpected situation when they responded to a residential 911 call. On the 4th of July holiday in 2024, a distressed young man told officers that he had seen his older brother, 27-year-old Austin Dennis Casey, and his mother, 45-year-old Crystal Lynn Wallace, having intercourse with one another. The 3 family members had been drinking together earlier that day when Wallace's younger son fell asleep. He saw Casey and Wallace being intimate when he awoke from his nap and was so disturbed that he ran out of the house and dialed 911. Police also spoke with Wallace's husband, who said he witnessed the act after arriving home from work. Casey had fled the scene by the time law enforcement arrived, but officers managed to track him down, and both he and Wallace were arrested for incest. During questioning, both suspects made vague statements about making poor choices while intoxicated. Casey eventually admitted to having intercourse with his mother, while Wallace alluded to inappropriate physical contact, but fell short of admitting to the act. Records show that prosecutors declined to pursue their case against Wallace, noting in the court records that the decision was made in the best interests of the parties involved. Austin Casey pled no contest to incest and was sentenced to 5 years of probation. In February of 2025, the state filed a petition to revoke Casey's probation for multiple violations of his conditions, including evading supervision and not living at his approved residence. A warrant was issued for his arrest and he appears to still be at large. Number 6. Charles Ray Fuller. In late April of 2008, a 21-year-old Texas man named Charles Ray Fuller entered a Fort Worth bank and tried cashing a check for $360 billion. Employees were immediately suspicious and inquired about the source of the check. Fuller told them his girlfriend's mom had given it to him to start a record business, but when they called the woman, she stated that she had not given Fuller a check or given him permission to access her money. While searching the suspect, police found a .25 caliber handgun, a magazine, and a small amount of marijuana. Fuller was arrested on suspicion of forgery, possession of marijuana, and unlawfully carrying a weapon. He was released after posting $3,750 bail and did not respond to the media's request for comment. Number 5. Tyler Chambers. On April 14, 2025, a suburban Tampa resident named Tyler Chambers made an alarming post in a Facebook community group, which has since caught national attention. It featured a surveillance image of a young black girl named Sincere stopping at his Riverview home to sell candy, along with a caption about how she was lucky that no one was home to shoot her. Chambers faced immediate backlash and soon deleted the post, but by then it was too late. People had captured screenshots of it and were understandably outraged by his cruel words. According to news reports, Chambers argued that he believed Sincere had been acting as a decoy for a home intruder. He also defended his behavior by stating that he had a wife and child to protect and that he was hot when he made the post, which was why he deleted it right away. Chambers apologized, admitted he could have handled the situation differently, and said he wanted to have a conversation with Sincere's parents. But the girl's mother is in no mood to talk to Chambers. In fact, she's retained an attorney and is urging law enforcement to charge Chambers for his threatening behavior. Sincere's family is receiving an outpouring of support from the community and beyond, including a nearby resident who was also visited by Sincere that day and stated that the girl was not acting in a way that would make someone feel threatened. Number 4. Luke Foster. When 24-year-old Luke Foster of Manchester, New Hampshire, decided to impersonate a member of law enforcement in April 2025, he chose the wrong target, an off-duty police officer. Police received a call from the officer at around 7:30 p.m. after he was approached in Bicentennial Park by a man who was later identified by Fuller, he stated that the suspect identified himself as a police officer and told him to put his hands behind his back, but Foster fled the scene as soon as the victim revealed that he was an off-duty cop. Officers caught up with Foster's car and arrested him during a traffic stop. He was initially held without bail but was released following a court hearing on April 11th. After his parents offered to post bail and made it clear that they planned to remain actively involved in the situation, Foster's mother and father told the court that their son's crime stemmed largely from mental health issues and that he had recently sought treatment. As conditions of his bail, Foster is required to receive mental health treatment and is banned from owning weapons and ammunition. He must also abstain from drug and alcohol use. Number 3. Darren Durant. In February of 2022, a Florida man tried stealing a crossbow from a True Value store in Mims, where security cameras captured footage of him cutting off the security tag and trying to stuff the large object down his pants. Later identified as 46-year-old Darren Durant, the man could be seen trying to pull his shirt over the bow, which reportedly sells for $1,300 and up. He concealed the awkward bulge well enough to walk out of the store unnoticed, and the theft wasn't discovered until later that day when the store's employees noticed that the bow was missing. Several days later, a Seminole sheriff's deputy arrested Durant in a Walgreens parking lot on an unrelated burglary charge. He tried to run, but didn't get very far and was in custody when Brevard County authorities identified him as the suspected crossbow thief. Durant is currently serving a 9-year prison sentence for 3 counts of burglary of an occupied dwelling, attempted burglary of an occupied dwelling, 2 counts of burglary of an unoccupied structure, attempted burglary of an unoccupied structure, theft, and more. Prior to his current stint, Durant served 6 previous prison terms for similar crimes, starting with a 4-year sentence for burglary in 2003. Prison records list an anticipated release date of November 2030.
As always, thanks for watching. Be sure to subscribe, and maybe it will be your video that we'll be doing next.
Number 2. John Connaughton. During the summer of 2012, police responded to a Kmart store in Kenneth City, Florida, where a convicted predator named John Connaughton was accused of exposing himself to young shoppers. By the time officers arrived, the 38-year-old suspect had left the store. After speaking with the victims, members of law enforcement managed to track Connaughton down nearby and arrested him. Prison records show that Connaughton served a 2.5-year sentence started in 2014 for failing to comply with his requirements as a registered predator. He was convicted of the same crime in 2018 and spent another 2 years and 9 months behind bars. Connaughton landed at the center of news headlines yet again in April of 2025 when he was accused of dousing an employee with bottles of urine after the company the person worked for denied him a job interview. The urine splashed the worker's legs and destroyed an estimated $1,000 worth of merchandise, and Connaughton was charged with felony battery, criminal mischief, and aggravated assault. Number 1. Scott Pearson. In early 2025, a former Park Ridge, Illinois police officer was pulled over in Arlington Heights and accused of impersonating a member of law enforcement. According to the Cook County Sheriff's Office, 34-year-old Scott Pearson had a switch for flashing lights illegally installed in his vehicle, and he flashed his old badge, which is no longer valid. Pearson worked for the Park Ridge Police Department from 2020 to 2023, but it's unclear why he left the force. Following the traffic stop, he received multiple traffic citations and was charged with falsely impersonating a peace officer. Thanks for watching. Remember to let us know in the comments section what topic you'd like to see next.